All right, so I'm going to demo the assignment from week 2, day 1. Day 2 is pretty much the same except for the different names of things. This is just going to require JavaScript and also a a dependency that we need to install that will allow us to ask the user questions via the terminal. So I'm going to go through that and you'll see what I'm talking about once I start that. So the first thing, I'm going to do the code spaces, so it'll be what you're going to do instead of using VS Code. So first we're going to go to GitHub. We'll create our repo. I'm going to name it task management system. All right. So we can give it a brief description if we want. Make it public, no template. We're gonna add a README, no git ignore, and no license. So we're just gonna go ahead and create the repo. And then from here, we're gonna go to that code button. We're gonna make sure that code spaces tab is selected and this button right here is there. So we're gonna click create code space on main. And then that's gonna bring us to the VS Code via web, basically. And so it takes a little while to load. So I'm just going to let it load. I'll X out of this right here so we can have more room. All right. It's still loading. Okay. So I'm going to clear this so our terminal is kind of up. We can make that a little bigger. I'm going to X out of this. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to create a JavaScript file. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to do app.js because I think that was usually what Fernando uses. Okay, so if we go back to our instructions, it says your team needs a simple tracking system for daily work, logging both task names and estimated times to complete it. And we want to create 2 arrays, one named task names and one task durations. And then we're going to use this push method to push whatever the user inputs into the terminal, we're going to push that to these arrays. So the idea is to run your program in the terminal. And so when you run your program, it's going to prompt the user to enter a task name. And then it's going to ask them to enter how long that task will take. And then after you enter those into the terminal, it's going to push whatever you entered, the value of whatever you entered into those both arrays. And then we're going to print them out using console.table. So console table is kind of like console log. Like instead of printing out like exactly what you say, it prints it out in a table form. And then after we do all that, we'll commit and git add, git commit, git push. So the first thing we're going to need to do is install a library called prompt sync. Let's see, npm install prompt sync. Okay. So prompt sync, what it does is allows us, and I'll kind of show, you'll be able to see it in action when we use the terminal. But what it does is you import it into your project, and then once you use it throughout your project, you ask it like questions like enter the task name, and then it'll pop up in the terminal. So it's kind of, I'll just do it so you can see it. So the way we import it into our project, so once we have it installed, we need to import it into our project so we can use it. So that would be const, and I'm going to name it input because it's kind of an input. It's like getting an input from a user. require prompt sync. And it already knows, and then followed by these empty parentheses. So what it does is it initializes this input variable as like a function throughout your program. All right, so that's that. I'm gonna import prompt sync. Okay. All right, and so the first set of instructions is create an array called task names and task durations. So we're just gonna, we'll use let because it's gonna change, the value of it's gonna change over time throughout our program. So we'll use let instead of const. So task names. And then when we wanna just initialize an array, we're not really putting anything in it. We're just kind of starting it. So an empty array would be these brackets. So that's how we kind of initialize an empty array. So we'll do one for task durations. That's how you spell it. All right. So in here, he kind of like, I think I did a demo with the loops and the arrays. I kind of covered the do while loop and the regular while loop. So he's been doing it with the while loop. So what I'm going to do is he uses this flag variable that kind of controls the while loop. So we can, because if you don't have a way to control the while loop, it'll just continuously go on and it'll be an infinite loop, and that's not good. So we will set a flag variable, and I'll name it continue adding, and then we can set it to yes to kind of get the loop to start. And I will show you that in a second. So the next thing we'll need to do is start the while loop. So we could do while. So if you remember, whiles are like a loop. So in the condition, in the parentheses, so while whatever we put in this parentheses is true, we're going to execute all that, the code that's going to be in between the brackets. So in this case, what we'll do is while continue adding equals yes, we are going to get inputs from the user for the task name and the task duration, and then we're going to push those into the arrays. So the first thing we want to do is, let's see, I could just name it task, I guess. Yeah, we'll just keep it at task. And then we're going to use this input function that we imported into our project to let the terminal know that we are using input as a function. So all right, so the first thing would be input, and then in parentheses we're going to ask our question. So enter task name. And I always use this little space right here because otherwise when it prints out in the terminal, it'll be like right on, the cursor will be like right on it. And I just feel like it looks better that way. All right, so we also need to get an input for the duration. Duration equals, and then we'll use that input. And then we'll do enter duration. Okay. So after we get the task name and the duration from the user, we want to push it to these two arrays. So let's see. So when we want to push, we need to access that array. So the first array would be task names. Okay, so we accessed our array and we used the dot push method. So dot push and then parentheses, and then inside the parentheses, we're going to push whatever we want to those arrays. So in this case, it's going to be that task variable because currently we declared a task variable to this input. So whatever they input becomes the value of this task variable. And we'll do the same thing with durations. So task durations dot push, and then we will use that duration variable. All right, so once we have all this, we need a way to stop the while loop. Otherwise, it's just going to continue. We need a way to change this yes to no, basically. So once it changes to anything other than yes, it'll stop because that would become false. Like if this variable's value is anything other than yes, it'll turn to false, so it won't run this program. So what we'll do is we'll update continue adding. So when I say continue, we don't use this let keyword since we already have this variable declared. We don't need to use that again. So we'll update that to an input, and we'll ask the user, do you want to add another task? And we can do like yes/no, so they kind of know what to put. All right, so now that we have our while loop, we want to be able to, in the instructions, it wants us to report these two arrays in table form in the terminal. So we're going to use console.table. So after the while loop, outside of the while loop, what we'll do is we'll console.table, and then the first one we'll do the task names, and then we'll do another console table for the task durations. So let's see what we got here. So whenever we want to run our JavaScript inside of our terminal, we have to have node.js installed on our computer, but in this case, it automatically has it because it's on Codespaces. So what we'll do to access the node.js program, we use node, kind of like git add, git commit. So instead of that, it's node. And then we just enter the name of our file. So in this case, it's going to be app.js. So when it runs, it has enter task names. So that is coming from here, this line right here. So I'm going to do laundry or something. I don't know. I guess it's not a work task, but it's a task. So the next thing, it's going to ask us to enter how long it's going to take us. And that comes from this on line 12. So I'm just going to do 2 hours. All right. And so now it wants to see, now it runs line 17. Do you want to add another task? So I'll just do yes so we can have more things. So if you do yes, it continues with this block of code. So we'll do clean fridge. Duration, I'll just do 1 hour. And then it goes back to this question, do you want to add another task? And I'll just do yes again. So we have a few things. So we're going to enter another task name. Wash car. I don't know. 1 hour. And then I'll do no this time to stop the while loop. So if you do no, it stops the while loop, and then it runs this last 2 lines of code. So let's see what we got. So the first table is all the task names, and the second table is the hours that we put in. So when we do console table, it automatically does the index of the array. So we start at 0, 1, 2, and then the values of those indexes. And so we entered laundry first, and then clean fridge and wash car. And so these kind of correspond to the hours that we put in, like the durations that we put in. And I think that is it for this one. I can also do one for the next day because it's pretty much the same. So I could probably do it separate so you don't have like a long video to watch. But that is pretty much it for this. So to recap, we used this prompt sync kind of library program that you can add to your project. So we installed it using npm install prompt sync. And then we import it using this line right here. So then we initialized two different arrays, one with task names, one with task durations, and we just made them empty. So it was these empty brackets. We added our flag variable, which is a way to control our while loop and a way to break our while, like to close our while loop. We use the flag variable. So then we have our while loop. So while continuing adding is yes, we're going to continue to ask these questions and save them into the variables. And then once we get those values, we push them into those two different arrays that we have for task names and task durations. And then we update our flag variable, continue adding, with another input, and we ask the user if they want to continue. Because if they enter no, it's going to be different from this yes, which will turn false, and that means it won't run the while loop anymore. And then after the user finishes entering their tasks and they answer this question with a no, we print out two tables of our arrays that we have up here. And we see them right here. So that's kind of like what they look like in the terminal. All right, so that is it for this. I can do another one for the other one, or let me know if you need if anything confuses you or anything, because I know it's pretty brand new, this prompt sync, and running things in the terminal is probably brand new for you. So, all right, that is it.